Hi there. My name is Josh Whitson, and this is my sample lecture for Colorado State University in partial fulfillment of Nursing 576. It's always tough to get bad news. Not the Aunt Janet lost her job or the cat got into the garbage again kind of news. The more existential, threatened sense of love, worth, and belonging type. The kind where someone somewhere on the other end of a phone line exhales deeply in true Hollywood form and delivers a line that makes your insides want to be on your outsides. The you have herpes kind. My friend didn't move. I watched helplessly as he struggled for words, his face full of horror as he gazed blankly at his screen. I could see the shock. This was nothing he'd expected. The voice finally broke the silence. Do you have any questions? As the waiter passed, he could only find one phrase. Drinks, please. I think often of the vulnerability spilled across a Chili's bar top that day. A raw exchange of revelations about the future, family, relationships, self-perception, and intrinsic value, only found at the bottom of a glass, several glasses of cheap tequila. As I said goodbye and left for home, I began to wonder what was driving this cultural stigma around herpes, where it came from, and what I could learn to dampen it. I spent the next few months alongside him, poring over articles, researching virology, laughing, crying, and talking about shame and stigma and life. This is what we learned. Let's get this out there. You probably have herpes. Yes, that kind. But before your ex-text rampage, take a look at some facts. There are 9 viruses in the herpes family, some more familiar than you may care to know, that infect human beings. Diseases like varicella zoster, chickenpox, and Epstein-Barr, the virus that causes mono, are often overlooked as lifelong herpes infections that are spread by direct contact. Research from the CDC in 2005 suggests that 98% of the world's population is permanently infected with EBV, and over 95% will have contracted chickenpox by the age of 18. Cytomegalovirus, herpes virus 6A and 6B, herpes virus 7, and Kaposi's sarcoma-associated herpes virus are also commonly reported infections. But those aren't what scared you, so let's talk about simplex. Herpes simplex virus strain 2 is a double-stranded DNA genome encased by a protein shell that enters the body through mucous membranes. Under normal circumstances, a virus embedded in a cell will be engulfed, packaged, and presented to the host's immune system by way of a transporter antigen processing protein, or TAP, designed to move all viral fragments across the cellular membrane for identification. Herpes evades the body's immune system by interfering with TAP, a process not well understood and difficult to observe. Invisible to T lymphocytes, natural killer cells, and macrophages, it resides as a latent infection within the neural ganglia, often the trigeminal and sacral nerves, though these are only tendencies. Still with me? HSV can present anywhere in the body, depending on where the infection sets up, a common misunderstanding in the eye of the public. HSV2 can express orally, while HSV1 can be found on the genitals, and they are easily transferred from one zone to the other. Under a microscope, the strains are virtually identical, differentiated only for taxonomy purposes in the 1960s. 2 out of 3 people worldwide are infected with HSV1, while 1 in 6 have contracted HSV2. Transmission occurs through skin-to-skin contact, usually within mucous membranes and often in early childhood when children are infected by family or relatives who kiss them on the mouth. Symptoms range from mild rashes to those graphic images they showed you in sex ed, but for the most part never present at all. For this reason, over 90% of people living with HSV1 or HSV2 don't know they have it, but are still transmitting through asymptomatic viral shedding. Because of this, it's impossible to know where it would present if it did, which means just knowing you have it doesn't protect others. It's quite the brand of complicated. See, what I've learned through this research is that viruses, bacterial infections, and diseases don't care at all about our stigmatized perceptions of them. They infect us whether we like it or not, and sometimes despite the proactive steps we've taken to prevent them. Ever had a flu shot and wound up quivering on a couch next to a mound of snotty tissues anyway? And those transmitted sexually are no different. They happen because we're human beings doing human being things that we shouldn't be sorry for doing. And herpes, of all things, is quite trivial. It has little to no effect on quality of life and no effect on lifespan whatsoever. It's also quite manageable. In fact, the CDC doesn't recommend testing for HSV at all, based on the inaccuracy of the assays, the medical irrelevance of the virus, the unwarranted social stigma, and the statistical reality that the majority of the human populace is already infected. So why the hype? The social discomfort around herpes is undeniable. Take a spin around Google and you'll see what I mean. Over the years, sites like Positive Singles, HSV Singles, and STDmatch.com have tapped in, skimming millions off the insecurities of their users. But prior to the 1970s, herpes genitalius was a common skin condition, no more alarming than acne or eczema. Treatment was centered on controlling symptoms, and testing was only conducted for medically relevant reasons. So how did we get here? Treating those with herpes like 2000 BC lepers? Have your shock face ready? Money. In the mid-1970s, Burroughs Wellcome had a problem. Once a profitable competitor, the pharmaceutical manufacturer was short on cash, and an 8-year product drought was beginning to squeeze the margins of its London-based parent foundation. In 1981, they struck gold. It was a drug makers promised would control the symptoms of irreversible viral infections, a godsend for a company in an 8-year product drought. But the topical version was limited, and initial profits were minimal. Marketers insisted there was no sell point, as many on their own teams had never heard of the viruses that acyclovir aimed to control, specifically genital herpes. It seemed that they would need to raise awareness of the problem they wanted to solve. It seems they did just that. A campaign was launched aimed at raising public awareness of viral symptoms, and the results were astounding. Within a year, over 1,000 articles had been written on herpes, and the company received federal funding to back herpes treatment. Despite modern-day allegations that the campaign directly contributed to the public perception of herpes, the company has insisted that the push was aimed at increasing quality of life for their patients rather than monetary gains. But in the words of H.L. Mencken, when somebody says it's not about the money, it's usually about the money. By 1985, the market was ready. As the FDA approved an oral form of acyclovir, Wellcome's sales soared, up 130% to 75 million, due almost entirely to acyclovir. Whatever the true intent, the impact was enormous. Time magazine threw fuel on the fire, crafting a cover featuring a young couple with a tagline that would set the stage for a national stigma. Herpes, the new scarlet letter. From here, the media and a misinformed American society would build the perception of herpes into what it is today, a just punishment for promiscuity. So there you have it. The stigmatization of herpes was a direct result of a marketing campaign from a monetarily motivated pharmaceutical company mixed with a hysterical, sensationalized interplay between consumers and the media. Who's to blame is debated, but one thing's for sure. It was manufactured. No matter where it came from, it's a harmful misrepresentation, and for most people with herpes, it's been nothing short of traumatic. Online forums are littered with anonymous, desperate pleas for advice, written as if their author has a week left to live. Even physicians have become unwilling to test for herpes due to the psychological harm of a diagnosis. The ones that are often misinformed, undereducated, or subject to the same bias presented in pop culture and the media. The simple reality is that HSV-1 and HSV-2 are incredibly common, easily contracted, lifelong infections that bear an unwarranted, manufactured stigma. On a basic level, stigma is a social device we use to create boundaries around what we have identified as our tribe. Exclusion of others has always been a primitive part of our way of life, with understandable roots. If there's a them, it ensures there's an us, and having an us to be a part of was at one point, and truthfully still is, necessary to our survival. It's no secret that tribalism is alive and well in American culture. Look no farther than college football in the South. Americans spend billions of dollars a year on sports gear just to associate themselves with schools they often have no affiliation with. And I would argue that the allure is due to how these events cater to our older brain functions. The dynamic is always the same. There's always an us, our team, our group, our chant, our logo, and our flag. Inversely, there's always a them, a rival, an opponent, someone against us. The pride that expresses itself in body paint, chants, colors, and fight songs is rooted in a powerful biological message deep within our limbic system. Stay together and stay alive. This is just one of the many reasons we ostracize others and make it our mission not to be ostracized. A basic understanding of tribe is important because, as Andrew Newberg notes, the in-group will always orchestrate scenarios that are less favorable for any out-group. In other words, simply being a part of a group results in ill feelings of will towards others, and this evokes the desire to isolate oneself from them. And the way we isolate ourselves from them can take any number of harmful forms. In relation to stigmatized groups, we often out them through whispered jokes about their security as members of humanity and pretending with others that no commonality exists between us due to some part of them. Stigma, then, can be thought of as a toxic expression of dualistic tribalism, which meets its end when we expose our minds to the commonality we share with a people group. Herpes havers, drug addicts, the dude on the corner just asking for some lunch. We're all human beings on a big spinning ball in the middle of nowhere, trying to figure it out. We all have quirks and flaws and things we don't want others privy to. But when we consciously understand that having these things is to be included and apart, our mindset towards others and ourselves shifts. If we can calm the outdated and hyperactive mechanisms in our brains surrounding in-group tribalism, we can learn over time not to exclude others at all and come to view humanity as a great big, all-inclusive room at the table, us. Thank you.